My mother used to shop at a little grocery store around the corner from us. When I was a little girl, uh, she went over and she heard these three men speaking Polish. So she went over to them and she said, do you have a problem? Is something wrong? And he said, we just came here from Poland. At that time it was Poland. But anyway, we just came here and we need a place to live. We have to look for a place. So my mother said, what part of Poland? What city were you from? And they said, Sherashevo. And my mother said, that's where my husband is from.
I believe the name comes from the name of the town where my father grew up. The town in Polish is Sherashevo. In Yiddish is Shershev. So the name Shershevsky, I'm sure, means son of Shershev. During the First World War, he was living in the forest and chopping lumber and making wood shingles. And this is how he learned the trade.
When he left Europe, he went to the only place that would take him, which was Argentina. And he had arranged with Jenny that they would meet in the United States at some point. So then when he got to Argentina, he met our mother and her family. And he told me once that not only that he loved my mother, but he loved her family. He was very close to all of them. So Aunt Jenny would write to him regularly, why don't you come? And every time he would say no.
My earliest memory of my mother, I was 3 years old, and I remember this scene going to the hospital where when Sarah was born.
Her name was Maria, and that was Spanish and Polish. And her last name was Chijewska. She was very good-natured. All the neighbors really, really liked her. She worked at a factory that made cloth, woolen fabric. And her job was to look at it, and if there would be a flaw in there, she was supposed to fix it so it didn't show. And she was very good at that.
I think we had a very nice home. We never suffer from lack of food or lack of clothing. Our home was very modest. It was really, we lived in a lower middle class neighborhood. Our house was, I would say, less than modest. Our bathroom was a building in the back with no flushing. But we had a large patio. We had a big fig tree in the back. We had a garden in the front. And we had I would say, we didn't lack for anything, except we didn't have any fancy toys. When the ice cream man came, we only could get one ice cream between the two of us, and we had to split it. One of us had to cut, and the other chose which half to take.
And you mentioned the bathroom that was an outhouse in the back. You didn't mention the shower. You want to explain how the shower worked?
Yes. There was a contraption in the shower, was a metal can, and there's a copper coil inside the can, and the water flowed through that copper coil. On the bottom of the can, there was like a vessel which somebody had to pour kerosene on that vessel, and you light up the kerosene and the fire heated up the coil, and that gives you a hot shower. The length of the hot shower was determined precisely by how long the kerosene it took to burn completely out. But the shower just dripped over the floor, and there was a drain on the bottom. So we did have a shower. It was not a very modern shower, but it worked.
Mark and I got along very well for the most part.
We had our fights, but they never lasted very long.
But one time he was annoying me, and I took a shoe and I threw it at him.
But it must have caused some damage. And then when my dad came and asked what happened, I denied anything that happened, and nothing happened. Everything is okay. And I think that cemented our friendship. I guess one of the things that happened is for me, is we used to play soccer in the street. There was very little traffic in the street, so we could play in the middle of the street, set up two goals by putting two boxes. That's one goal, the other box, other two boxes, the other goal. The way the teams were chosen, two guys chose sides. I choose him, I choose him, and I was always the last one to be chosen. That shows what a good player I was. And every now and then, the cop would come on his horse and chase us away, because we were supposed to play in the playground, not in the middle of the street. But the playground was a few blocks away, and the street was right in front of the house. So we played in the street. When the cop came, we all rushed, went away, run away. And then the minute he left, we went back and continued playing. An interesting thing that I have about school is I've kept my 6th grade notebook, because I went through it. Among all the classes, all the lectures, every now and then there is a paragraph or a page with religious instruction in Catholic religion. Now, what happened there, in 1943, there was a revolution. The military took over the government. One of the things, this was a military dictatorship, and one of the things they did is they decreed, for the first time in the history, religion is to be taught in the public schools. So here we were required to sit while were being instructed in Catholic dogma. My parents went to the Board of Education to get us excused from that class. For some reason, the paperwork always got lost, so I had to sit in the class and learn about Catholic religion. My 6th grade teacher was obviously not very happy about doing this, so his technique was to write on the board the lesson plan, which he copied from the catechism, the one page of Catholic dogma. He would write it on the blackboard, and we, the students, copied what he wrote on the blackboard in our notebook. We never talked about it. We never discussed anything. We just went through the motions of complying with the requirement. So in my notebook, I have lessons about Jesus Christ, about the Trinity, the concept of God, and all kinds of things, but we never talked about it.
My mother went to the school and talked to the teacher. I was the only Jewish girl in the whole school. And she talked to the teacher and said that it's not our religion and could she be excused. So in my notebook, it says, when it came to the religion part, it says religión, which means religion, and I was excused and I was sent to another classroom to sit for whatever time it took to have that. There was never a problem. Nobody ever cared that I wasn't part of the class. And they also obviously must have known that I wasn't Catholic, and I had no problem.
In Argentina, we had very little in the way of Jewish. We were completely non-observant, so I don't remember anything. The records that I'm talking about, that was in the United States. From day one, he was very, very insistent that we are Jewish. There was no question whatever. The only thing is we were not religiously Jewish. We were ethnically Jewish. And in Argentina, all his friends were Jewish, well, at least all the relatives, and they spoke Yiddish to each other. So it was not a question of not being Jewish. We were very Jewish, except that we were not religiously Jewish.
My mother, she went to work every day until she got sick. And she passed away when I was 9 years old. She was very good. I understand everybody loved her. After she passed away, a lot of people came to me and told me how wonderful she was. And just the other day, I was looking over my 4th grade notebook, which was the last year I went to school there. And on the last page, there's a big paragraph that my teacher wrote and told me that I should always remember my mother and that she would be very proud of me.
I think he was completely devastated by my mother's passing. And so it hit him very, very hard. We had an aunt, Aunt Jenny, in Los Angeles, who bugged him all the time, come to the States, that she would take care of us. And I think my dad really must have struggled with that. I remember he asked me, I don't remember if he asked Sarah, whether we would object leaving Argentina and going to the States. And my answer was, if you want to go, I'm very happy. I'm willing to go. I didn't say I was happy, as I was willing to go. And so the decision was made, and that was it. He was never happy coming to the States. His English was very poor, and he never made too much money. So for him, it was a strange foreign country. For Sarah and me, it was very good. I'm glad we came here. For us, it was the best thing that could happen. For him, he was not happy. We left Argentina in a ship, by ship. This was a cargo ship called Jose Menendez, but also carried passengers. There were maybe 100 passengers, and we had our own cabin. We ate in the dining room, and the food was real good. There were a whole bunch of passengers there. Some of the passengers were very friendly and nice. There were some other ones that were very snooty, including there was a family, I think they were diplomats or Argentine consul that was traveling to the United States to become a consul in somewhere in the United States. They were very snooty and the high class. They barely talked to us, but there were others that were nice. The trip was a very long trip. It lasted over a month to go from Argentina to New Orleans, because it was a cargo ship, so it stopped several ports to load and unload cargo. So we stayed in a port in Venezuela for 1 week while they were loading and unloading. So it took a very long time. We arrived in New Orleans, and then we took the train from New Orleans to Los Angeles, and that took about 3 days. Yeah. I was seasick every time we started from one of the ports. That day I was seasick. The next day I was okay until we landed someplace else. We stay there 1 or 2 or a few days. We start again, I get sick again.
When I came here, I lived with Aunt Jenny for a year. And she spoke half English and half Yiddish. Okay? I had to figure out which was which because I didn't know either one at that time. I lived with her for a year. And she was very, very good to me. She was very religious, very orthodox. She kept kosher and perfect kosher. I mean, she wouldn't go off of anything. She spoke, I would say, half Yiddish and half English when she spoke. She was very, very good to me. And so was Uncle Abe, her husband. They both treated me as if I were their daughter. About a year later, Aunt Jenny got very sick. She had to have surgery, and she just felt she couldn't have a child and to take care of her. So I went, and by then I was a little bit older, and she felt, well, we have no choice. Then I went to live with my father and my brother, Grandpa Mark, and I lived there for a while, and then my father bought a house in Boyle Heights, so we all moved there, and that's where I lived until I got married.
This was the family that lived next door to my Aunt Jenny, okay? They were the people who signed the paperwork that allowed us to come to the States. So they were directly involved in signing the documents that really allowed us to come. They essentially guaranteed that we would not be a burden to the American government. So they essentially were the guarantors of our coming to the States. The husband is the one person who taught me to drive. They happen to be very left-wing, I don't know if I call them communists, but they were on the far left. When I started working for Rockwell at Atomics International, I had to get a security clearance. It was called a Q clearance, was from the Atomic Energy. I was called in to an FBI office where I was interviewed by the FBI. It was a small office. There were two FBI guys and me sitting in that room. I was being essentially grilled by them, asking me about connections with this family. And also, my father attended meetings of some left-wing organization. He was not active, but he was invited by the neighbors to attend, and so he attended. So the fact that my dad attended those meetings, the neighbors who were far left were our friends and guarantors, caused me some problems. And but I guess I must have answered the questions correctly because I got my security clearance. When I became a citizen, the judge asked me whether I want to change it. So I said, yeah, I'll change it. And what name do you want? So, you know, I wasn't very imaginative. So I kept the first syllable and changed the CZ to CH, like Cherchevsky. Now you're going to ask me, how is that pronounced? Well, it's a made-up name, so you pronounce it any way you want to. If it were French, it would be Cher. If it's Spanish, it's Cher, and it's purely arbitrary. I usually pronounce it chair, just like a chair.
I went to Hollenbeck Junior High School. That was part of the district. And from there, I went to Roosevelt High School, which was part of the district. In high school, there were 10 of us or so, and we called ourselves the Teensters. We even bought a sweater with a letter on it, and we were all very, very good friends. The one that I was probably the closest one is B. And we used to do a lot of things together. My father used to invite her over whenever he barbecued. Her parents used to take me places when they took her, when we went someplace. So we were very good friends. And when I went to high school, they chose the best students in different subjects. And Bank of America gave me an award for English. That I was very proud. And also I was very proud that I was voted to become editor of the school annual for the year that I graduated. I took a lot of journalism classes. I think that's why I got the award, because I was very active. I was active in the school newspaper. I was editor of the front page or something for a while. And I provided a lot of the articles that went into the school newspaper. And then, of course, I did the school annual. And I laugh about this when I tell anybody. I tell them to look at a certain page on the annual. And the theme was, you get a ticket to see this. And so you see a hand handing the ticket to another hand. Well, my hand was handing it to the journalism teacher.
When I was in high school, I've heard somebody talk about Caltech. I never knew what Caltech was or where it was, but I heard people saying what a great school for science and engineering. And so I said, hey, I want to go there. Then I found out how much it cost. It cost $600 a year for tuition. And so that seemed like a lot of money. And my dad took me to visit a cousin of his who lived someplace in the North Valley somewhere. And he was very wealthy, well-to-do. And my dad asked him whether he could afford to send me to Caltech. And his answer was, can you pay for the first year? And the answer is yes, the first year we can pay. And then he said, in that case, go for it. So that was very wise advice. So I applied to Caltech. As it turned out, my dad didn't have to pay anything. I was able to earn enough money during the summer to save some $300, and I had a scholarship or an advancement by the school, so it only cost me $300 tuition. Every entering freshman had to take chemistry. We had no electives. Everybody took the same thing the first year, and our professor was Linus Pauling, Nobel Prize winner. He loved to teach freshman chemistry. And my personal feeling is Linus knew me by my first name. I never took a class from him except sitting in this big lecture room where he lectured to 150 people. But apparently, after the second year, I was a chemistry major, and there weren't all that many chemistry majors, and he was the chairman of the department. So I assumed that he made it his job to learn everybody's name. So he knew me by name. Nobel Prize winner called me by a first name. There was one interesting event in going to Caltech and our carpooling. We always speeded. I didn't drive. My friend did the driving. We're always barely on time. One time a cop stopped us for speeding. So the cop asked us, where are you going? And so we explained, and he kept talking and talking and talking. And here we are, we gotta get him. And so he kept us for about 20 minutes or 30 minutes, made sure we were good and late, and then he let us go without a ticket. The professor that I had the most to do with was Norman Davidson. In my junior year, I was worried about where am I going to get a summer job. And one day Davidson saw me in the hallway and said, would you like to work for me in a research project? And this is like manna from heaven. So he set me up in an office that I shared with 2 graduate students. He set me up in a laboratory, gave me a research project, which turned out into one publication. And more than that, it turned out into a National Science Foundation fellowship that paid for my whole graduate career. So I never had to pay a penny for graduate school. It was all due to Davidson. When it came time to choose a graduate school, I went to Professor Davidson, where should I go to school? Harvard. Okay. And since I had a fellowship from the National Science Foundation that paid for the whole thing, Harvard accepted me, no question.
Mark used to go with this group in Pasadena regularly when he was going to Caltech. At that time, I was still in high school. One day he said to me, he was going and he saw me sitting there. He said, you want to come? Of course, I said yes. So I went with him and I got involved with the group. Then Mark went to Cambridge, to Harvard. He left and I continued to go by myself. And I would go there every time. In the meantime, I met June and Faye, who came together, and I met Bob. And how did I meet Bob? Bob used to go to a cleaner and a tailor in Pasadena. His name was Irv Greenfield, and his father And he used to go there and he and his parents used to go there and take their cleaning there all the time. And one day he was there with his father. It was in June in 1955. And he took the cleaning there. And Irv said to Bob, Bob, you know, we have a nice group. We're meeting next Sunday. You want to come? And he said, no, it's Father's Day. I'm going to go with my dad. So his father was a wonderful, wonderful guy. He said, Bob, you go and have fun. We get together all the time. You go. That was the day I met Bob. And I met June and Faye quite a while before Mark did. And why? Because he was away at Harvard, and June and Faye used to come to the group. So I met them. I knew them. I wasn't close, but we knew each other. And so when he came home on vacation, he met June, and he dated her it was in June. I think you dated June. And then you went back to Harvard and you corresponded with her. So in the meantime, Bob and I decided to get married. So we're trying to set the date, and I wanted to set the date when Mark would be in town because he was going to be the best man. So anyway, I wrote to Mark and I said, when are you going to be in town? We're setting the date. And he wrote me back and he said, are you inviting June Rosen to your wedding? And at that time I was debating because I didn't know her that well and I had to keep my list down. And so he says, will you invite her? So I did. So when he came to my wedding, that's when he got engaged to June.
I like the idea that she was a teacher. She played the piano. She liked to play tennis. And I thought, hey, we have a lot in common, and we seem to get along fine. I don't know what she saw in me, but she obviously liked me. And so it was a mutual feeling. I remember one night we stayed in a place near the Grand Canyon. I didn't have all that much experience with girls, and here I was with my new wife and traveling, and we were sleeping together, and hey, this was a new experience for me. That's all I can tell you.
When I was about 20, I applied and I became a citizen November, whatever, sometime in November. And I knew I was getting married in December. So when they asked me, in fact, the judge asked me, are you interested in keeping your name or would you like to make it a little easier? I said, well, it's going to be easier. I'm getting married and I'll be changing it. When he asked me what it's going to be, and I said, Meyer, he said, oh, okay, I understand. So that's where we left it. But I never changed my name, my maiden name.
June got a job as a secretary to a professor in the I think it was Japanese department, and June had to type letters and papers transliterated Japanese. So she was typing what was to her was gibberish. It was Japanese words transliterated. She didn't know what she was typing, but that was her job. This radio station in Boston was a classical music station, and they had a program like a contest, name that tune, and the earliest postmark with the correct answer would win this 33 RPM record. So Mother and I would get in the car, drive to the front of the post office, listen to the quiz, and either I knew the answer or Mother knew the answer, and we would enter the post office. This was after hours. That was in the evening. Enter the back of the post office, found somebody, asked to put a stamp on the envelope. So our stamp was like 1 minute after the program finished. So we won 2 or 3 times because we had the earliest postmark. If the question was about opera, I knew the answer. If the question was about piano music, Mother knew the answer. So between the two of us, we are able to beat the system. After this happened 2 or 3 times, the program said, we understand some people are parking at the post office, which we think is unfair, so we are changing the rules, and now we will choose the winner in a random way among all the correct answers. So we didn't win anymore. After 1 semester, I decided, hey, I gotta change. So I changed to physical chemistry, and I got signed up with Professor Kisiakowski. He was a very famous professor, and his main claim of fame was that, first of all, he babysat the first atomic bomb test in Los Alamos or in Alamogordo or someplace. He devised or invented the triggering mechanism for the bomb. And working for him was a lot of fun. He became a science advisor for President Eisenhower. My thesis had to do about the structure of a detonation wave in a tube. I had a long metal tube, 2 compartments, so the exit was covered with a saran wrap diaphragm, which sealed the chamber, and when the detonation wave, it blew out that diaphragm, and the detonation would go out. The first time I did the experiment, it sounded like a cannon going off, a big, loud explosion, which I did not expect that. When that happened the first time, a professor up in the 3rd floor came running down, saying, "What happened? What happened? Anybody hurt?" And I said, no. This was a planned experiment. And so I explained to him what I was doing. And he said, well, are you going to be doing this often? And I said, oh yeah, I expect I'll be doing this very frequently. It's going to be noisy like that every time? Yeah, it's going to be noisy. So he insisted that I put a siren on top of on the roof of the chemistry building, and that I was to play that siren every time I was going to do a test to let everybody know that the next explosion, the next sound, it was planned and it's not an accident. The problem with that was that when I flicked the switch for the siren, it triggered my explosion before I was ready to take the photograph, and then I wasted the whole morning doing that. So from then on, I said, the heck with this, I'll do my explosion, and then I put the siren. Nobody objected to that. But because of my explosions and the siren, I became very, very well known in the department. I was the guy who made all that noise.
I went to Los Angeles City College for 2 years. I got my AA degree. And soon after I got my AA degree, I got my Mrs. degree. I got married and I went to work with Bob and I didn't go back. Okay, he worked together with his parents. And his mother went with him everywhere he went. So his father and I used to pack orders. They would get orders, bring them, and they would tell us, what we needed to pack. And I worked with his father. Now, his mother was the person who invented the sleep mask. She called it slumber shade. She got a patent, and I have it. And she was very involved with that. But who made those shades? Well, Oscar, my father-in-law, and I. And he hired a woman who used to come and sew them. And he and I used to work together, cutting up. And in those days, we were using a scissors and cutting the shades. And we put them together. And every time the lady came to sew, I would be there helping. And he and I used to do most of the packing of the orders.
I think the major change was the beginning of the computer age. I had never used a computer for anything. My first computer I obtained when Danny and Ronnie went to Stanford, and I bought my first computer through them, through Stanford, and I had a Mac, total memory 128K.
Amazing.
When I was a graduate student at Harvard, Harvard obtained the first big computer which filled up a room. That was in the early 50s, 50 to 54. One of the big companies donated this computer, which used like 1,000 vacuum tubes. It was located in an air-conditioned room. Harvard started a class to teach us programming for the computer. We never had it, nobody knew about computer. So I took a class as a graduate student and learned machine language. And I learned that to add two numbers, it took like 15 lines of code. I said computers would never work. Not if if it takes that effort to add two numbers. I was writing my thesis in my apartment when and this was June, I was almost done with my thesis, and that's when the doctor called to tell me that David was born. Soon thereafter, I finished writing my thesis. I had the oral exam, passed that, and David was 3 months old when we drove back to California. When he was 7 years old, we decided, hey, he needs to attend Hebrew school. And that's when we first joined the temple in Reseda in the valley. I was carpooling with another fellow when we worked in Canoga Park, and we needed to join a temple. So I asked him, hey, where do you go to temple? And he told me he went to Beth Ami and Reseda. So we joined Beth Ami and Reseda, and David started Hebrew school there. Well, when we moved to Thousand Oaks, I immediately looked for a temple in Thousand Oaks, And Etz Chaim had just started, a few months earlier than that. That was 1960, I think. And we joined the temple in Etz Chaim when we moved to Thousand Oaks. At that time, Etz Chaim had maybe 60 families in total. We met at the Methodist church. We didn't have a building. There's a group of us carried two aluminum poles with a blue cloth, which we put in the front of the sanctuary to hide the cross. So we converted the church into a synagogue. Some years later, a member of the temple, Dr. Schaffner, donated some land where Etz Chaim is now located. Mother became a Sunday school teacher. She had a job there, and she was very, very good. You know, her profession was being a teacher, and being a Sunday school teacher, she had the little kids, and she really enjoyed it. So those were interesting years. David was in Boy Scouts, and he hated it. He never went beyond that lowest level, and he didn't like that at all. So after a few months, he quit. Michael, on the other hand, joined the Indian Guides. We were the Pawnee, P-A-W-N-E-E tribe, and Michael was Little Beaver. I was Fat Beaver. We had our own costume. We have this red shirt with fringes and pony on the front and the name in the back. And we went to all kinds of trips, camping. And David joined us a few times as a guest, but he was not a member of the tribe. Well, he was older. Michael liked that very much, and actually so did I. And we camped out at a beach north of Santa Barbara one time. We built a totem pole. We built a tent, decorated it by painting it. We built a totem pole out of ice cream cartons, 5-gallon cartons. Each father and son, Michael and I, decorated that activity. Michael enjoyed it. I did too. It was a complete surprise. Complete surprise. I don't think the doctor knew about that. I think it was a surprise for him. And I don't know whether at that time there was ultrasound, and I don't know whether he could hear 2 heartbeats. But anyway, I was at home at that time. Fathers did not go to the delivery room. And I was at home, and the doctor called me and said, "Congratulations, you have twins." So we had to scramble to get get another crib, to get additional clothing, additional diapers, figuring out what to do. There was a time that mother was completely
uh, uh, distraught. What do I do about feeding them? I can't breastfeed two of them. So a friend said, well, don't you know about bottles? Baby bottle. So I remember we lined up Danny and Ronnie on the sofa, one on one end, one at the other. One held a bottle to one, and the other held a bottle to the other. And this is how we managed. Eventually, we bought a twin stroller, and we walked around pushing a twin stroller. It was a bit strenuous, to say the least. But it was a complete surprise. Danny and Ronnie, they had their problems as growing up, as very young, 3-4-year-old. What happened is Danny was very sensitive. Ronnie was not. So what happens to somebody who is sensitive? The sensitive guy gets teased. The guy who's not sensitive doesn't get it, teased. So Danny got the brunt of being teased. So whenever there was anyone being persecuted or teased in some way, it was Danny. So, the two grew together very close. And twins grow together. But there was some conflict, not serious, but the kind of family conflict when young kids are living together. Oh, they adjusted very well. They enjoyed having younger kids. David was always the oldest kid, so he was the responsible. Michael was always complaining that he was the second and more ignored. Being the second is never good, but being twins, they are special, so everybody focused on the twins. So David and Michael adjusted very well.
June was wonderful with children. I used to admire her because I remember that when I would give Marlene a birthday party, I struggled. I had trouble controlling the kids. Now, when June gave David or Michael a birthday party, she would say, okay, children, we're all going this way now, and all the kids followed her. She was terrific with kids, really, really good. And I admired that, and I used to watch to see what does she do to get all the kids to do everything she wants. And I learned from her.
My father lived in the house in Boyle Heights.
He worked as a cabinet maker. And that was a factory located in Maywood in Los Angeles, and they made furniture for stores, like display cases, restaurants, cabinets. So he had his work was careful, good furniture. It was not just building a frame house. It was furniture making, cabinet makers. So he worked all his life in Los Angeles until he retired.
Every Saturday, I used to drive from Thousand Oaks all the way to Boyle Heights, which is about 50 miles away, pick him up in my car, drive him to Thousand Oaks, where he stayed all day Saturday, and he helped me do the landscaping. We built a lot of furniture
especially in my first house in Thousand Oaks, that big bookcase, and we built it together. I had this hi-fi cabinet, which I still have it here in Fountain View. We built together, so I learned a lot from him.
My job, he was the builder. I just held the wood while he did the cutting. So I could observe what he did. So I learned by watching. And then when he died, he left me all of his tools. So all the tools, hand tools that I had in Thousand Oaks, most of them came from him, left over as inherited tools. My father became sick. He had a form of lung cancer. He was a very heavy smoker as a youth, as a young man, a very, very heavy chain smoker. One time he went to the doctor and the doctor said, you have two choices. You can continue smoking and die, or you can give up smoking and you can live. So he gave up smoking overnight, cold turkey. He had his pocket full of liquid, the black licorice candy, which he used in place of cigarettes, but eventually the smoking caught up with him. He had several years of life after quitting, but it was remarkable that after starting smoking as a teenager and most of his adult life, he was able to give it up just like that overnight. That was incredible. But he did it because he had no choice. When I was still in Cleveland, Sarah called me and told me that how seriously sick he was. He was in the hospital. So I took leave from work and came back to Los Angeles, stayed with Sarah for a couple of weeks. Every day I would go to the hospital, keep him company. He was at Cedars-Sinai in West LA. And eventually he passed away. During that week, it was a very heavy tragic time between Sarah and me. We did what we could to make things as easy as possible, but he passed away.
Bob really liked to go together. We used to go together to different places. And a few times he took me and he took B. We went to Santa Barbara, and he enjoyed going with us. We went on a lot of trips, and it's hard for me to say which was my favorite. Probably going back to Argentina to visit the family. They were all very happy to see us, and they treated us very, very well when we went. I wish I could remember all the dates of when we went. We went several times, and we enjoyed our cruises. We also enjoyed, we went to England, Scotland, and Wales. That was probably the one that I enjoyed the most. I also enjoyed going to Canada and Colorado, New England, and we drove through parts of New England one time too, and that was very nice. Traveling with him was very good.
We went on vacation to an area in southern Ohio, and I think it was the Mohawk River. We took a canoe trip. We rented 2 canoes. All 6 of us were 3 and 3 in canoes. We went down this river, the Mohawk River, and someplace in the wilderness, the water got a little bit rough. David, your dad, stood up in the canoe, wrong thing to do, canoe tipped over, and he was, the people in that canoe got dumped in the water. I looked up, maybe I stood up too, my canoe tipped over, we got in the water. We somehow managed to get to the shore of the river. We all sat on the edge of the river. We had a canoe, 2 canoes, but no paddles. Up the river without a paddle. Mother got frantic, scared. She said, "I'm not getting back on that canoe. I'm walking back to our camp." We had to talk her out of it because we were in the wilderness and there were no trails. There was no way that you can walk back to camp. So we sit on the edge of the river wondering what to do. Sometime later, we see a paddle floating down the river. Somebody must have dumped someplace else upstream and their paddle came floating by. Quickly, we sent Danny to the middle of the river to rescue that paddle. I think we had 1 paddle. Now we had 2 paddles, 1 for each boat. So we talked Mother into getting back on the boat. And one paddle apiece, we managed to get back. But that was one scary hour trying to figure out what to do up the stream without a paddle.
Okay. What happened was Mark was going to a Jewish day school, to Herzl, and it was Hanukkah. And they always needed volunteers to do things there. So we, Dad and I volunteered. We had a station wagon, and anytime the kids went on a field trip, guess who was asked to drive a group of them? In those days, we didn't wear seatbelts. And the kids would go in the back of the station wagon and we would take them places. Okay. Hanukkah came around and they wanted to serve latkes to the kids. So they asked for volunteers, and a few women volunteered, including me. And we went to make the latkes. Well, I don't know why we were making so many latkes. And we're working and working on it. And the other ladies all got tired and they left. I was left all alone there frying the latkes. And I was there, I don't know how many hours making latkes. So when I went home, I smelled of latkes.
David was the first one to pick up an instrument. And we were living in Thousand Oaks at the time. And he was taking lessons from this lady professor at California Lutheran, at the time was California Lutheran College, and now it's California Lutheran University. So he started on violin with this lady. When we moved to St. Paul, he took lessons from somebody who was a professional player with the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra. And then he joined an orchestra that was conducted by I think he was a member of the I think it was St. Paul Chamber Orchestra, met in a museum, and David was part of that group. And I remember, one thing I do remember is one of the pieces they played was Dvorak's Seventh Symphony. And if you remember, the second movement has this beautiful movement with violins have a very, very big part. And David was at home practicing that part for hours on end. I did not object, but he really worked very hard on that. Michael took clarinet lessons. He started, I think he started in Thousand Oaks. And then when we moved to St. Paul, he had clarinet lessons in St. Paul. And then in Cleveland, he had lessons from a guy who played in the Cleveland Orchestra, a guy who was mean as hell. He treated Michael very badly, very abusive. At one time, I think he slapped Michael, but Michael had strong enough, and he was able to put up with this guy. He was a good teacher, but mean as hell. And so Michael put up with that and was able to get by. It started with piano, with Grandma June was their teacher. So I think everybody owes her. She was really the one that started the Cher family musicians. Danny, he started on violin, and so he couldn't be a member of the band. I think once or twice he participated in the percussion section because he could push the cymbals. Danny had an interesting start in his violin career. A week before he had to start with violin lessons, he had a bicycle accident, fell and broke both of his arms. So for some time, he had a cast in each arm. And so his violin career had to be postponed for a while, bad omen, but somehow he managed. And after he got through his broken arm period, he took up the violin with his lady at Cal Lutheran. Michael and Ronnie chose the clarinet. I think they were given a choice in the school band, you know, a wind instrument. And so I think they chose clarinet as being the most melodious of all the band instruments.
I enjoyed being with my children, playing with them, taking them places. And so to me, that was really wonderful. They're super.
I guess I'm not divulging any major secrets, but I can say that Mother and I have been extremely lucky with our kids, and we are proud and happy with all of them. I don't know what we did, but we must have done something right, because I know of other families that have problems with their kids. I don't think we ever did, and I'm very happy with everyone. I think we pretty much agreed that all four of you had different goals, different ideas. You wanted things. And what I remember is nothing was outlandish or extraordinary. And we pretty much went along with, you guys chose what schools you wanted to go, what professions you were after. We never had anything to say about your choice of wives. We never have any occasion to say, hey, you're raising your kids badly. Not every family had that. And so we were very fortunate. Mother and I don't think we ever disagreed on how to raise kids. Every now and then we probably got a little frustrated and upset about what you guys did, but nothing so serious to require anything more than shut up and be quiet. But the only time when I had any concern is when David said that he was majoring in philosophy. I was thinking to myself, my God, what is he going to do? Open a philosophy store? But that was the only concern. When he decided to go to law school, that was a relief. Sheer luck, I guess. Maybe not. Is that we encouraged independence. We tried not to criticize if we thought that what you're doing was not exactly what we would like it. But I think we learned to go along and accept that, it's your life and it's up to you to choose what you want. And whatever you do, if you don't go robbing banks, you're doing fine.
Of my nephews, I used to joke around that the one that was the closest to me, I always said was my favorite, when my four nephews were away at college. And Michael one day asked me if I still make lollipops. And I said, not too often. And he said, well, next time you make some, well, I'm your favorite nephew, right? You're going to send me some. So I said, okay, I'll send it to my favorite nephew. So I packed it up in 4 boxes and sent it to my 4 nephews. But I really, really, I'm very proud of my 4 nephews. And I am very thankful that all 4 include me in activities. A lot of nieces and nephews don't want to have anything to do with an aunt. And that's not how my nephews and their wives act.
I knew Laura's father before I knew Laura, because we worked in the same building, working for the same company. Harry was, he was a director higher up. I was a lonely, low chemist. So I didn't have very much to do with him, but I did meet him. He was a director, I was not. Later on, when I met Laura, I found out that she was related to this fellow that I knew from before. I met Allison's family for the first time in Israel. I met Allison's mother and aunt, and Allison's uncles. I never met Allison's father. Allison's mother, Julie, came to California and spent time in California. She was a very shy, quiet lady. She spoke good English, but with an Indian accent. Laura's parents in Palo Alto, so we had a formal relationship. We met a number of times. We were at their house, but we never had the close relationship that I had with your grandparents. For one thing, they lived in Palo Alto. We lived in Los Angeles. Lisa's parents are in Chicago, so we met them also, but we're farther away.
I have good memories of all the weddings that I went to.
We were very close with all of the grandchildren. You and Naomi and Eitan, we got to meet very frequently. When Benjamin was born, he was born in San Francisco. So when he was born, we immediately drove to San Francisco to meet him. Let's see, Ronnie's kids, I guess, were born in Thousand Oaks, so we got to see them right away. Danny's kids are born in Palo Alto, so we of course saw them soon, but we didn't get them as often as the others. When people ask me how many grandchildren you have, and I say I have 10, they all say, wow, 10 grandchildren. That's something special. At this point, I welcome great-grandchildren.
The 2 best days of my life. I was absolutely thrilled. Absolutely. And I still am. I am very proud of my granddaughters. And let me tell you, Grandpa was thrilled too. When you guys were born, it was wonderful. Oh, the way he beamed when he would see you. He loved it when he would hear either through your parents or through me that you were coming over or that we were going to your place. And he enjoyed that very much. And me too.
I've been painting probably for the last 15 years or so. I started when Ariella was in high school. Ariella is what, about 32 now? So she was 18 or 17 at the time. And she was taking an art class in high school, and she took up doing murals for people. And we let her do a mural in our living room above the fireplace. And while she was up on the ladder doing the mural, I was standing there and watching her, and I said, hey, I can do that. And so I was inspired by Ariella. So right now I am painting almost all the time. There is a gazette published at Fountain View, and my work has been already featured in the gazette. So wow. I am a published author or painter, artist. My drawing technique, the way I draw portraits or scenery, what I do is a real artist would never do that. I do it the way a draftsman or an engineer would do it. I take a photograph, I put points on the photo, I use a caliper measuring distances from the axis to a thousandth of an inch, and then use my calculator to adjust the position of a point based on the scale factor. You know, a photograph is 8 by 10, the canvas is 20 by 15, so I have to adjust, and I plot 100 points on the canvas. So a real artist would cringe, but that's how I put it. So I don't have to be very good at drawing because I'm reproducing just a small, but to do a portrait, I do by putting dots on the portrait, the tip of the nose, the center of the eye, where the ear is, the top of the head, where the chin is. So, so the figure that comes out bears some resemblance. When I was in Thousand Oaks, I was doing woodwork. I worked in the garage, made toys, and I made all the frames for all the paintings. I had a whole bunch of power tools, table saw, and drill press, and router. A fellow in Thousand Oaks who was a real good toy maker, he gave me those plans, and I follow the plans. And a toy that involved marbles going down this fancy fancy pathway, jumping from one place to the other. It was a box, about, I don't know, 3 feet wide, 2 feet tall, and came up with this fairly complicated device, and it was fun making it. There was one that looked like a Christmas tree that the marbles kept coming down, and as they came down, they made noise, bang, 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 bang. And the noise part is what attracted a lot of the kids that played with it.
My grandmother used to do a lot of knitting, and she used to make socks for all of us. And I sat there watching her, and I learned how to do it, except I learned how to do it backwards. In other words, I knit as if I were left-handed because I go in the opposite direction because I saw the mirror image, but it works out. It works out. And right now I'm making different blankets that get donated for needy families. And Mitzvah Day is going to be the end of December, I think, or November. And we're going to be donating a lot of things. So while I'm at home, whenever I have a chance, I work on my knitting. I've got some right here too. My father used to get, for Father's Day, he used to get a sleeveless sweater every year.
A vest.
And well, it was, he put it on over his head. And the reason he liked those is because he used to work, he was a cabinet maker. And during the winter, he didn't want to wear a sweater on the outside because it would get dirty. So he would wear the sleeveless sweater under his shirt. And every year, that's what he got for Father's Day.
I learned to play chess when I was, 9, 10 years old in Argentina. One of my uncles taught me to play chess. I have the original chess set that I got as a 9-year-old. I got to be pretty good because I got books and studied and played games that the professional champions played against each other, and I followed their moves and read the books, read the commentaries, why this was a good move, what this was a bad move. I got books that taught me openings, chess openings, the first 10 moves, and the major openings that all the professionals use, and I studied that. So at one time I was very interested and spent time studying. I played a game against Bobby Fischer. He was the world's champion. Now, I can't claim that I played just by myself. He was doing an exhibition and he played with about 40 people at the same time. And I was one of the 40 that played him. And the way that worked, by the way, my game, I have a recording of, I kept a recording, pencil and paper, so I can go back and do that game all over again. At the beginning of the game, I had a lot of time to think about what my next move would be, because he had to go meet all 40 others. But as time goes by, people drop out because they lose. And so he would come a lot sooner. I happened to be one of 3 people left at the end. He made one big blunder in the game, which I took advantage of. I lost a piece at the beginning, and then later on, I was able to win the piece back because he blundered. And so as a result, I had a drawn game, but foolishly, I gave up because he kept coming so quickly. We did a lot of things together. For the most part, we got along fine. We had our fights every now and then. We had our disagreements on various things. So I remember being mad at each other, not talking to each other for a day or two, and then we get back together, back to normal. So typical young wedding. I was 24, she was 6 months older than I was. I got married, I was still in graduate school, and so we did everything together, and our main job was raising young kids. And we moved a number of times. We went from living in Culver City when we arrived back in Los Angeles. I was at UCLA, then we moved to Van Nuys. We bought a house in Van Nuys, then we moved to Thousand Oaks. So everything was done as partners, and we ended up married for over 60 years. So I think we did all right. When Grandma died, I started going to temple every day, and I did that for 11 months. I used to go every day. It was 6 days a week, or 5 or 6 days a week, every evening and Saturday morning, Sunday morning, and I used to join for the minyan to say Kaddish. And what happened is, after 11 months, I continued doing that. It became like a habit, or I felt the necessity to do this. To some extent, I was living alone, and this was a way of getting out of the house, meeting other people. The last few years, uh, I felt that I had acquaintances, but not close friends. And that's when I decided to leave Thousand Oaks and move to Fountain View, because being in Thousand Oaks, I was essentially alone. And it was that part of my life that caused me to change my whole life. You know, I lived in Thousand Oaks for 55, 60 years. And the last 2 years, I mean, this new place is a new situation for me. And I have people that live in the same building that I see every day. As you know, I have a very close lady friend now that we do all kinds of things together. We have dinner together almost every night. Now we do it by way of FaceTime. But we go for a walk every day. You know, we wear a mask. We don't exactly keep 6 feet apart when we walk. We do violate some of the rules about visiting each other, so we see movies and sit close together. But we do it discreetly. I think the main thing is the fact that coming to the United States was good for Sarah and me. We got a good education. We lived a very upper middle class life. Our kids had all the opportunities. I had all the opportunities. So for Sarah and me, coming to the United States was probably as good a thing that could happen. It was unfortunate that my dad did not enjoy it. If my mother had not passed away at the time that she did, we'd probably be still living in Argentina. Sarah has been in communication with cousins in Argentina ever since we came. I don't do as much writing, hardly at all, but she does all the communication. So even though we left Argentina when I was 14 years old, we still are in communication. And, you know, that's a long, long period of time to be connected.
Ever since I came here, I corresponded with aunts, with my grandmother, with cousins, and I wanted to keep the relationship going.
My sister is my closest relative, and we have gotten along extremely well. We never had any fights or disagreements. We don't always agree on everything, but we never have a fight. Especially after my dad passed away, Sarah and I have been very, very close. Sarah and Grandma were the best of friends. They were the closest friends.
Well, we got along quite well. And we knew that if the other one needed help with something, we did it. So we actually got along quite well, and we needed to. The main thing that I've enjoyed about family is family. Whenever we have a family reunion, and my nephews and their wives and their kids are there, to me that is very special. my family in Argentina, my family here, my family in Israel. I'm very happy with everybody. And I am so glad that I'm still in touch with just about everybody. My advice would be everybody stay connected and be friendly and enjoy each other. And then, of course, I am very proud of my grandchildren, and I am very proud of my brother's grandchildren. I feel that everybody is very successful and doing very, very well. Keep it up.
I think that we covered everything, and I'll look forward to Jonathan's final product. Poor Jonathan, he's going to be the editor, and he's going to have a hard time of it.